Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Here's the video kind of going over the slideshow or the notes that we were going to take today. We'd normally do this in person, but since we're virtual, I'm just gonna make this pre-recording and you can listen to it. Okay, so the impacts of the American Revolutionary War. Okay, so far in class we've talked about in this unit, we've talked about the build up to the Revolutionary War. Okay, the Stamp Act, the Boston Tea Party, all those events that made the American colonists mad. Okay, and then we talked about the Revolutionary War, which was very impactful and it was very unique because not a lot of people believed that the colonists would win before the war. Okay, so them winning and them having and them driving Great Britain out of America, that was a huge deal back then. Okay, and it was something that was very surprising. Now, kind of the important thing in U.S. history that we like to talk about the most is the impact. Yeah, it's really fun talking about wars and like the fighting and the battles and all those things. But really, the thing that we're most interested in U.S. history is looking at the impact of events and how it changes countries and how it impacts them for the future. Okay, that's why it's important to understand our history so we can kind of make decisions and learn how to think so we are making good decisions. Okay. We have one right now in the presidential election. Okay. No matter what side you're on, you have to know how to think and form your opinion on what candidate you agree with. Okay. By looking at the issues, looking at the candidates, and choosing, and not just letting a friend tell you, not just letting a family member tell you what to believe in, actually doing the research and thinking yourself. So, the impacts of the American Revolution. The warm up question is, what are some things that occur after a war is over? Yeah, I kind of want you to take some time to think about that, and you can hit pause if you need to. But what are some things that are going to occur after a war is over? Okay, because I think just generally speaking, if we don't think about it too in depth, we just think after a war is over, we're good. The fighting's over, and we just move on. Daily life occurs, normal life occurs, and that's not really true. Okay, so kind of think about what are some things that have to happen after a war is over. Okay, and if you want to pause the video, feel free. Okay, so kind of the answer to the warm-up question is the first thing that happens with when a war is over is the two countries get together, or multiple countries, or sometimes the winning side gets together, and then they tell the other side they have to come to agreement. Okay, they have to come to a peace agreement. Okay, even though the fighting stopped, that doesn't mean that they're in agreement over what's going to happen. So for the Revolutionary War, after the fighting stopped and Great Britain said you won, we signed the Treaty of Paris later on with Great Britain. And the four main effects of this treaty was the American Revolutionary War was formally ended. Okay, so this is no longer, the war is completely done. Okay, this might sound like a small point, but there's some wars in our history where we've never signed a peace agreement. Okay, so for example, the Vietnam War, which occurred 40, 50 years ago, we still haven't signed a peace agreement with Vietnam. So we're technically still fighting that war, even though we don't have troops over there and they're not attacking us. We're still technically in a war with them. So the first thing this treaty did was it officially ended the American Revolutionary War. Yeah, the second thing it did is the British acknowledged the independence of the United States. Okay, so they acknowledge that we are our own country. Yeah, you can kind of think of this as like when you're growing up and you're moving out of the house. Okay, you turn 18. Your parents might not always kind of acknowledge that you are independent right when you turn 18. Okay, but usually when you move out, when you graduate from high school, when you get your own job, maybe when you start college, that's when they start to recognize those things that you're independent. Okay, so for example, if you go to Purdue, your parents probably won't call you and say you have to be in bed by 8 p.m. Okay, that's not something they would do. because they acknowledge your independence to do what you want. Okay, they might still call you and kind of recommend that you do something. Okay, but this is kind of the same thing here, except now the British completely acknowledge that we are independent of them. Okay, so we're not expected to pay taxes to the British anymore. Okay, we're not expected to follow their rules. Number 3, the colonial empire of Great Britain was destroyed in North America. Okay, before this, Great Britain was all over North America. Okay, they had the United States. Okay, so now they're completely out, as you can see from the map. Okay, they're still in Canada, and even in Canada today, they still have a lot of British influence. Even though Canada's independent, they still have a lot of influence on Canadian. Okay, but as you can see from the map, so the fourth thing is the U.S. boundaries were established, and as you can see from the map, the green is the areas that we were established, okay, and given. Okay, so kind of the majority of the United States, or a small portion of the United States compared to what it is today. Okay, but you can kind of see how much growing room and potential we have to grow in the future. Okay, so we basically got everything east of the Mississippi River. Okay, here's the Mississippi River, and we got everything east of it. Okay, and then Spain held on to Florida. Okay, so later on in our history, we have Louisiana Purchase, which gives us a large portion of this land from Spain. Okay, but that happened later on. Okay, so the United States is starting to take form, but it's obviously not even close to what it is today. Okay. Impacts of the revolution. This is kind of the interesting part to talk about in the debate. Some people want to make the argument that the Revolutionary War wasn't actually revolutionary. Okay, because even though Great Britain took over, not a lot changed. Okay, just a new country in charge. Okay, so the impacts of the revolution on America, number 1, obviously we gained new territory. Okay, number 2, it started the abolitionist movement. We'll talk about that later. Number 3, states started drafting constitutions. Okay, so we had the United States Constitution that was going to take effect later on, but now states were drafting their own constitutions as well. And that's something we have even today. We have the United States Constitution, and then we also have individual states with their own constitution. Number 4, the Continental Congress ratified the Articles of Confederation in 1781. Okay, so the first form of government that we have in the United States was the Articles of Confederation. Okay, we know as the Constitution is like the supreme law of the land today, and that's the article we follow, and that's the article that is the most important document in the United States. Before that was eradicated, the Articles of Confederation took over. Okay, so before we got to the Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation. Number 5, fear of powerful governments. So we're very fearful of giving the national government way too much power. Okay, because that's what we dealt with Great Britain. Okay, we dealt with them having too much power in our eyes and being able to tax us whenever they wanted to. So we were fearful of giving another government that much power and having them basically turn into Great Britain again. 6, open new land for settlement and new markets for trading. We talked about a lot about how Great Britain limited our trade. Okay, that's gone now. We can trade with whoever we want. We can buy goods from whoever we want. What didn't happen, these are kind of the things that are where people make the argument that the Revolutionary War wasn't actually revolutionary. Okay, it wasn't a game changer. Number 1, women remained unequal in the law and in practice. And this is still things that we're dealing with even today, 300, 400 years ago, is equality for women. Okay, women actually gained the right to vote in 1920. Okay, which sounds like a long time, but it's really not when you consider that's only 100 years ago. Okay, so that means probably your great grandparents didn't have the right to vote. Slavery continued, especially in the South. Okay, another huge problem Even back then, and the Revolutionary War doesn't happen until 1761, or I'm sorry, 1861, but we're already talking about it in the 1780s. Okay, there are already people against it, and then there's people for it, and we're already having that debate going on during the Revolutionary War or after it. And there's a lot of people that wanted slavery abolished after the Revolutionary War. Okay, so those are kind of the two arguments. One with people saying the Revolutionary War is revolutionary, and then one saying not really that much change. It kind of remained the same. Impact of the revolution. So I'm British. So the British crown was financially ruined. Okay, they lost a lot of money fighting in the war that they lost. British Army and Navy appeared weak. Before this, everyone was scared of Britain. Okay, they felt like their Army and Navy were the best in the world, and no one wanted to mess with them. Okay, this kind of made people double check that reality. Britain was worried Ireland might also want to rebel, so they relaxed regulations on them. Okay, they got worried about some of the other countries that they were in charge of deciding to rebel. So they actually listened to the colonists this time and relaxed regulations on them to try to make them happy. Okay, and if they did that with the United States, we might still be under Great Britain's control even today. Failure in the war led to reforms of the government. Okay, so they're looking at kind of things that they needed to change. Impact of the revolution on France. They saw America as an example, and they used ideas from the Declaration of Independence, and French citizens rebelled in 1789 against their own government. Okay, so France is kind of looking at us and using us as an example for how they're going to do things in France. All right, so the last thing I want you to do is be Washington. Okay, and this is a cool game we found where you're going to be George Washington, and you'll be forced to make some difficult decisions. And after playing the game, answer the discussion board questions, and you will want headphones for this game. Okay, so go through it. I think there's 3 different events you can go. Go through each event. Okay, and take your time while you're playing the game and listen to what they're saying in the scenarios. And then after a scenario happens, you have to make a decision. Okay, and you have a list of advisors that you can listen to before making that decision. Okay, the game will kind of explain that and how that's going to work. Okay, and you will have the rest of the period today to play the game, and you'll also have part of the period tomorrow. Okay, if you have missing assignments, you might want to do those instead of playing the game. Okay, this is kind of extra. Okay, it's a fun activity, but if you have missing assignments, you might want to play the game today, and then tomorrow come in and work on missing assignment. Okay, thank you for watching this. I hope this was helpful. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you and have a good day.